Good morning, Independence. It is 88 days to Super Tuesday, and this week marks the end of stage one of my campaign. We are officially just a little bit over 1 month in, and today is the election deadline day for the race for U.S. House of Representatives here in California, where all of the paperwork has to be turned in, all the signatures have to be acquired, and your declaration of candidacy, your ballot designation form, all of that has to be in by the end of business today. And I've successfully completed all of that. I've verified that all of the signatures I've collected are above the minimum requirement. I've turned in all the candidate statements, all the paperwork in both counties that I need to be on the voter registration or the voter information guide for both counties for the March 5th primary. So now I'm going to be on to stage two of the campaign. And stage one, my goal was just to complete all the official paperwork that I needed to complete to become a candidate for the race, and to begin putting out as much quality, unique content that I could to allow me to come up with a system on how to post to the different social media platforms, because they all require different things. YouTube and Rumble are good for long form content. Twitter and Truth Social are text and maybe a link to a video, which is how I'm using those. And Instagram and TikTok are for shorter form, as well as YouTube Shorts are for short videos. So I now have a system for putting content, for generating content for all of those platforms. And stage two, I'm going to work really hard at growing the viewer base on all of those. So if you haven't subscribed to a platform or multiple platforms, please do so. And then if you see a compelling episode or a compelling short, share it, send it out to people, because that's the way that I get out there. And I'm going to begin creating the content that I said I was going to create when I first introduced the Independent Joe Show to you, which is street interviews. And those will be interviews that are just impromptu on the spot. Anyone who is willing to talk to me and will allow me to post it, I will post me asking them questions and hearing what they have to say. And I think that's really important, because then you will get to see what I am seeing and hearing from voters in the district every single day. So that is the goal of the street interviews, to show you what people are thinking about politics, about what's going on in the world, about issues, what they're concerned about, what they're seeing in the community. I will also be creating the sit-down interviews. I have a preliminary list of groups of people, organizations who I would like to talk to. And if they're willing, I will have them to the podcast studio, and we'll sit down and have a conversation about what their group or organization is, what it does, who they like to have join their group, how they're helping the community, what kind of people they are bringing together, and what kind of projects they're working on. Or if they're community leaders and they're on a police force or city government, the kinds of problems that they are seeing come up that they haven't seen come up before, so that I can try to figure out how to help them if I were to make it into office. And the third type of episode will be episodes where I sit down and talk about the issues, either by myself, or I would love to have experts from the community come in to help me work through complicated issues. For example, Israel-Palestine conflict, Ukraine-Russia conflict. I don't know the histories and what actually happens on the ground over there. So at this point in time, I'm not in a position to figure out what the solution is, so that 10 years from now, the conflict is resolved and we don't have to worry about an escalation like is happening in both of those regions today. And I would love to try to figure out what, as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, I could do to resolve that conflict and to move toward a permanent solution. And other issues like, how can we fix our national debt? How can we get our deficit back to zero? How can we get back on a path like we were on in the 1990s when we had a balanced budget, we had a budget surplus, and we're on a path to have zero national debt? How can we resolve the drug problems and the crime problems and the homelessness problems and the transportation and traffic problems, and making sure that every demographic of society has an opportunity to continue to grow and to prosper, instead of moving backwards, having our budgets ripped apart by inflation, being taxed to no end, and having all of our tax money spent on government agencies and programs that don't help us, that don't benefit us. We need to begin finding solutions to all of these problems, and that is what the issues episodes will be about. Another important thing I need to do in this stage of my campaign is to increase my supporter base, to increase the follower and subscriber base on all of my social media platforms, to increase the number of subscribers to my newsletter, because unless I can get out this message to the people in the district and show them that there is a clear, better alternative to electing a partisan Democrat or a partisan Republican, I'm not going to make it anywhere. I'm not going to make it past the March 5th primary. So that's why I'm going to be out in the community every single day, talking to as many people as I can, getting them to one of these platforms, whichever platform they are on regularly and like to follow, and to begin driving, asking them to reach out to their friends, to their neighbors, to their colleagues, to their family who also lives here in the district, because word of mouth will help this spread by the March 5th primary so that I finish in the top 2. And I strongly believe that if I can finish in the top 2, then I stand a good chance of winning the general election in the fall, because a lot is going to happen in our country by then. And the path that the two-party system is on is not sustainable. And more Americans are waking up to that every day. That's why I'm getting in the fight now. That's why I'm making sure that as of today, the deadline for running as a candidate in the US House, everything is done. I'm officially in the race, and I'm going to be here to help fight the battle on behalf of this district to not just fix these problems, to not just fix our country, which is in almost free fall right now, but to create a vision that is a vision that's worthy of what our history is, of what our past is, because everything is eroding and being destroyed around us, and I'm not okay with that. We need to look 5 years from the future, where do we want our country to be? And those first 5 years are critical, because we are either going to be able to turn our country around and begin pulling out of this nosedive and heading back in the right direction, or we will have lost the country. We will not be able to fix what has been broken, and that's the scary thing. That's why I'm in the race. That's why I'm fighting. I'm not going to allow my daughter, for any of our kids or our grandkids, to grow up in a country that is unrecognizable from the one that I grew up in, from the one that you grew up in, from the one that our parents, our grandparents grew up in. And I know that the generations of my parents and my grandparents are looking at what's happening, and they are mortified. They can't believe that the America that they grew up in, that they knew, which was that every generation would get better, would be in a better living situation than the one before them, is gone. And their livelihoods are being threatened too, because of inflation and the destabilization of our country by all of these terrible policies. So I know that my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation, I still have one grandparent left, they want to see a younger generation come in and turn things around, because my grandparents' generation was the World War II generation. My grandpa fought in the Pacific Theater in World War II and almost lost his life. And he passed away several years ago, but I know he would be mortified at what is happening in our country right now. And sorry, I had to take a little cup there. I know that I will never be in a position to fight for our country in the way that my grandfather had to fight for our country. But what is going on right now is a fight that we all have to engage in, because our country and its rapid decline is as big of a threat now as it was back then. The next 5 years, our country is either going to begin to pull out of the nosedive that we're in, or we are going to never be able to regain what we've lost. We need to work as hard as we can and we need to work as together as we can to turn this around. And that's why I'm in the race now, because over the next year, things are going to get much worse in this country. I can tell, I can feel it. I think a lot of Americans can feel it. We have more destabilization and uncertainty now than at any point in time during my life. And that is including back in 2008 during the great financial recession. Because it's not just the economy now, it is much more than that. But unless I can get my message out there, then this is not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to be out in the community working to get as many followers, subscribers, supporters as I can in this next stage of the campaign. So you can help by just talking to your neighbors, to your colleagues, to your family, to your friends, especially if they're here in the district, because that's the only way that I stand a chance to make it through the March 5th primary and to win the general election next fall. If you believe in what I'm doing, if my message resonates with you, then just use your thumbs to share a few things here and there and start putting the word out there, because that's how society works now. We all follow each other on social media, and that's going to be the best way to get the message of my campaign out there if you want to support it. So with that said, I will see you maybe later this evening if anything interesting happens today. Otherwise, I will talk to you again tomorrow morning, and I'll give you a little bit more insight into what I will be doing with stage 2 of the campaign.